The word culture is most commonly used in three senses: an integral pattern of human knowledge, beliefs, and behavior, excellence of taste in the fine arts and humanities, also known as high culture. The outlook, values, goals, attitude, and customs shared by the society. Education, in its general sense, is a form of learning in which the knowledge, skills, and habits of a group of people are transferred from one generation to the next through teaching, training, or research. Education frequently takes place under the guidance of others, but may also be autodidactic. Any experience that has a formative effect on the way one thinks, feels, or acts may be considered educational. For example, if the cultural pattern of a society is materialistic, its educational system will also be framed in the same way. Meaning and concepts of culture testifies to the fact that education and culture are intimately connected. In broader sense, culture is not part of education, but it is education itself. Cultural patterns of a society determines its educational system. Educational system simultaneously affects the culture of that society by shaping and influencing and thinking the behavior of an individual. Similarly, if there is cultural conflict in the society, it can be wiped out only by education. Wherever there are human groups, there is culture, that is a man-made part of environment and learned patterns of behavior. Wherever there is cultural heritage, it is diffused and transmitted to succeeding generations by education. Since human beings live in groups, we might say that wherever there are human beings, there is culture, and education is in various forms. School education is limited mainly to literate cultures. The role of education is much smaller in non-literate groups. Just as culture influences education, much is the same way education also exerts a powerful influence upon the culture of a country. Following are the various ways by which education influences the cultural heritage of country. First, preservation of culture. Each country believes and flaunts the superiority of its own culture over the rest. Hence, it tries to preserve its culture in its original form. Education is the only means to complete this task. Thus, education preserves the culture of the society. Conservation of culture is the first and foremost functions of education. Mankind is a species that has predominant opportunities for the conservation of social and cultural heritage. Man has intelligence, power to develop language and preserve culture in the written and unwritten forms. The accumulated culture is being transmitted from generation to generation, and it is helping the mankind to improve its conditions of the physical, social, mental, emotional, recreational, creational, and aesthetic aspects of life. The whole masses of knowledge, even though conserved, need not to be transmitted to the younger generation. It is the adult generation and plans suitable educational programs for the transmission of such conserved culture. It serves as an instrument for the transmission of conserved culture also. Second, transmission of culture. The process of preservation includes the process of transmission as well. Transmission of culture from one generation to another is the best guarantee of its preservation. In the words of Ottaway, the famous sociologist, the function of education is to transmit the social values and the ideas to the young and capable members of society. The education not only helps in transmission of cultural heritage to the rising generation, it also trains children in a manner that they enrich and modify that heritage through their own efforts and thus help in the establishment of a better and happier society. Thus, education performs the important function of constantly reorganizing and reconstructing human experiences for the promotion of culture and civilization. Third, development of culture. The function of education is to bring about the need and desirable change in the cultural ideas and values for the progress and continued development of society, without which social progress will stratify and come to naught. Education accultures individuals modifies cultural process by research and deeper investigations into all areas of human requirements. Though culture fixes the framework of the personality of future citizens, it is to be conceived not as a fixed force. Culture is not static, but it is dynamic, as human life is. It is to be developed from time to time depending upon the social change, sociological developments, cultural needs, and national requirements. The impact of culture of other developing and developed nations on the development of culture of an underdeveloped nation is quite obvious. Education, an instrument for the development of cultural treasure, has to develop the personalities of all individuals with whom it is concerned to the optimum level as to enable them to contribute their best for cultural upliftment, advancement, and furtherance. Fourth, continuity of culture. Culture is the lifeblood of society. Without culture, a society is bound to decay and die sooner or later. Education upholds the continuity of culture through its diverse activities and programs. A society establishes schools to preserve and transmit its culture from generation to generation. It is found that some schools try to develop undesirable cultural chauvinism and superiority complexes among its children. Children should be motivated to learn more and more from cultural interaction among various cultures. Ideally, education should help them to develop the qualities of tolerance and adjustment, along with mutual give and take attitude. This cultural integration and cultural synthesis is the dire need of the world society in modern times. Fifth, development of common culture. It is the utmost duty of education system to provide education that tends to develop common culture. The content of education should be so developed as to foster the desirable goal of national integration. Hence, schools in the modern times are to be conceived as an instrument of dominant cultural value orientation. Regarding the importance of culture to individual development, this is observed that for each individual there occurs during his early development through contact with contemporary culture, assimilation of values, ideas, and more than bridge gap of several thousands of years. He becomes through this process an individual capable of living in a modern society. Thus, education and culture are mutually related. Culture determines the pattern and material for the education process. Education serves as the instrument for the transmission of cultural heritage.